Once people start to realize, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be done by police, then the creative juices of people much more innovative than me can work together to build solutions that don't involve the police. And the money that's saved, if you look at the budget, and I probably have it somewhere in there, but it's not at the top of my head. If you look at the budget for what it costs for SROs, school resource officers, the amount that's paid to them versus the amount it would take to pay somebody, you know, $15 or $20 an hour with health insurance is way less. So these are just, it's not only a political thing, there's a financial side to it once you start to dig into it. We've been involved in struggles to, you know, against kind of the decimation that's happening in Palestine. It's interesting, a friend of mine, we had a discussion the other day about where Black Lives Matter stands on Palestine and Israel, and whether we're if we are against Israel or anti-Israel. And I think it's an interesting discussion. I'll just, again, throw out something on the tip of the iceberg. If that's something people want to talk about, we can delve more into that. And this is something that's not explicitly in our principles right now, but from that discussion, it makes me feel like we should amend it so people understand. We support the Palestinian people's fight for land and territory. We acknowledge that, in the last, well, better than, but over the last half century, you've had a whole taking of Palestinian land, and we're for a democratic country, whatever you call it, that involves Jews and Palestinians together, forming a government in their collective interest. So that's kind of what we stand for. We also, now, oftentimes people who are part of the Palestinian struggle get viewed as anti-Semitic. And unfortunately, some of them are. It's just a fact. But that's not our stance. In fact, the fight against anti-Semitism and Jew hatred is connected to the struggle for black liberation. If you're a fighter for black liberation, we don't have to compare which of us are the most oppressed or who got decimated the most in history. We were both decimated, in my opinion, by the same system of greed that puts profit before lives and puts power before lives. And we have too much common ground to be divided and seen as not on the same side. And the same black people and the same Jewish people or people of Jewish descent who are fighting, who are often scapegoated for the problems that exist in society, should see themselves as natural allies with Palestinian people. To be opposed to what the Israeli government is doing is not the same as being opposed to the survival and the existence of Jewish people. And we have to separate those things. Or we fall into the same campaign that justifies the military and political advancements of reaction in the name of Jewish people, when this government, who claims to be the defender of Jewish people, turned the borders, closed the borders during most of the genocide of Jewish people. That's the real history. And that's something that we have to talk about more. And it wasn't just the U.S., it was most nations around the country that closed their doors in the moment where Jewish people faced the most persecution in the middle of the genocide that was publicly taking place. We've involved ourselves in different labor struggles. We've defended and fought for SEIU janitors who were on the picket lines. We stood with workers who were fighting both for union contracts and against anti-immigrant attacks on the job in Tri-County. We've participated, like I said, in the Dakota Access Pipeline, anti-Dakota Access Pipeline demonstrations. And we stood for choice with other people in the city just this past Sunday at Fountain Square. So, and we will continue to expand the things that we solidarize with and deepen our own understanding of our history, the history of other peoples, and mobilizing ourselves to advance what we started for, the struggle for Black liberation, and building a movement that can end police brutality once and for all. So that's it. Take any kind of questions or discussion now.